So a research paper came out that claimed that Tor can de-anonymize Monero. Now, the headline itself makes it sound like XMR got cryptographically broken, which just isn't true. Your money is still private, and nobody's actually breaking the cryptography of it. So there's really is a genuine attack in the paper that they document, and they do a great job of it, by the way. The main thing that it depends on was fixed before the paper was even written. So if your node's current, you're good for the most part. And we'll get into the, not most part later on. I want to say this because there's a ton of people out there that are morons that hype up stuff like this to absolutely no end, which is why I'm kind of forced to do this video. These people act like it's essentially the end of the world. Also, it's worth mentioning that I'm not like an expert in crypto in general. I dislike all cryptos, in fact, especially right now, except for Monero. With Monero, I don't care about its price. I don't really care about anything. I care about its utility, most of all. And the fact that in a ever more surveilled world where everyone is treated like a criminal, and technically is, because even our government can't tell you how many laws there are. So if they can't count how many laws there are, I can assure you that you don't know them all and that you're not following them all. So we're all therefore subject to stuff like arrest and prosecution for obscure laws that Agent Smith weaponized against us. And that's the point. Like, while I'm not an expert in Monero, there are a ton of really good people out there who are brilliant who actually are. And I think that the development team itself are some of the largest badasses in the world when it comes to being developers. And that the entire Monero community as a whole, in general, are some of my favorite people. Most are privacy maximalists, obviously, but not all. And they come from essentially every walk of life that you could possibly imagine, from like CEOs to just regular anons. And it's an extremely eclectic group. And on a regular basis, we tend to behead and eat our own, especially in places like Monero Twitter, which is a really small group of people, but it's like a really niche group anyways, which I love. I like it. It's kind of like going to DEF CON before it became $10,000 and was just totally taken over by feds. And people are like, oh, what do you mean it's taken over by feds? Dark Tangent's a fed, look it up. People in other crypto spaces tend to really dislike Monero people, but really, at the end of the day, who cares? Most of them use fedcoins anyways and think that it's empowering. I have no doubt the same people would try to sell me, for example, one day on the fact that bootlicking is nutritional. It has some kind of nutritional value to it. I digress. I'm going on a rant. I feel like a little understanding about the actual community is important in this aspect because it's really the community who ends up doing the amazing things and the amazing work. People like me are just the ones on the sidelines who talk about the amazing work that other people actually do. And that's why, in general, I'm of the mindset that the vast majority of YouTubers actually suck. Now, I like looking at attacks on Monero because most of them are actually really interesting. Monero, on a regular basis, gets the living hell beat out of it. And typically that happens by extremely well-funded adversaries and various organizations that are out there. And like, as a result, it's become over the years one of the best hardened cryptos around, just kind of by osmosis, by getting its teeth kicked in on a regular basis. It's learned to take a beating really well. So for those of you, who are in the crypto space, who don't necessarily regularly use things like anonymity networks, Tor essentially lets you hide your machine and run it as a hidden service, which means instead of an IP address, you get one of those long .onion names and people reach it without actually ever learning where it lives. Hence the whole hidden part of hidden service. So if you want to see a good example of these kind of addresses, you can and should absolutely check out my site, darknetlist.is, which is a replacement for darkwebdaily.live after the original provider for the domain name killed the URL because they dislike that I made a directory that they disagree with, which is great. Shout out to Andy Turbo and Quantumly Immortal, whose super chats I put forward to building the infrastructure and hosting it for now, when you run your own Monero node over Tor, it sets itself up as exactly that, a hidden service, right? So with that hidden service comes that .onion address that we talked about. And the entire point of that is to hide where your machine is. The entire gist of the entire paper is that the nodes talk too much, essentially. So every so often, Monero nodes do this timed sync. It's a quick check-in with the peers that they connect to, where they all kind of trade small lists of other peers that they know. So on the old version, every time the node checked in, it stuck its own onion address into that list. So anyone that it talked to could see that it was a hidden service node and see what its address was. Now, that's the identity leak that researchers found. It tells them which node is yours, not necessarily who you are or where your node is. So, given that, like any kind of sane nerd, I elected to build a virtual lab to be able to watch this happen and record it so you guys can see it too. Now, we start off by pulling both versions of Monero straight from getmonero.org. And the old one that the researchers actually tested, and then I also pulled the new one that, is the most recent one, essentially. Then I hash both files and I check the current one against Monero's own published list. And that's because it's what tells you that these binaries actually came from a legitimate source and, not from me. They're not mine. I didn't modify them or tweak them in any way. Now, the hash on my screen matches the hash on the website. So nothing in here has been swapped out or manipulated. So next, I write the setup, and there's a Tor container that's running 2 hidden services and 2 real Monero nodes sitting behind it. Now, one is the target, and it's the one that thinks it's staying private, while the other is the observer. And essentially all it does is accept the connection and write down everything that the target tells it to write down. Now, that's the entire experiment. So you have one node that's talking and one node that's listening. If you're watching this video, then that's pretty much what you're doing too. It's like if we had someone right here that was watching this and they're watching our interaction, that's what we're doing, right? So it's really simple. So now that we've built it, let's actually bring it up. We can see here that Tor is going to start handing out onion addresses. The one to watch is the targets, okay? The address is the thing that's supposed to stay hidden, and everything from here comes down to whether the target gives it away on its own or if it doesn't. So we wait. Now, because the 2 nodes talk on Monero's schedule and not ours, let's take a break real quick, okay? So while we wait, I want to tell you about today's sponsor. It's a VPN that keeps you anonymous. It encrypts your traffic with military-grade encryption, and it stops hackers from stealing your Wi-Fi passwords. And obviously, I'm completely kidding. I'm not some soulless whore, YouTuber. Every word of that is absolutely a script that somebody got paid to read. So, for example, PureVPN put no logs in writing and then handed the FBI enough logs to convict people. IPVanish advertised 0 logs and gave Homeland Security users' connection records, which are logs, by the way. Most of them lie about it until a subpoena actually shows up, and the guy that is reading you this nonsensical ad on YouTube has never looked at a privacy policy or a transparency report or read anything on Pacer whatsoever. Your browser already encrypts traffic. Like, that's what the padlock is. So what a VPN actually changes is who gets to watch you. And it moves from your ISP or internet service provider to a company whose guarantee is just a sentence on their marketing page or a tweet or some shill on YouTube spouting it off. Now, I don't have sponsors because I'm sponsored by subscribers. You guys sponsor me, not just here on YouTube by hopefully, ad blocking everything, but more so on my blog where people pay money to help support the mission. And if you're watching this now and you're like, oh, I'm going to go do that, you can't because I disabled it. And there's a reason for that. And that's something I'll announce later on. And it'll be more of a message directed at those people who have supported the mission. Because all the money that I get, I put towards infrastructure and building things out so that I can do things like the dark web list that you guys saw, do things for the community that better the world to some degree, in my opinion, better the world. Anyways, side issue. Let's see if our Monero stuff is actually finished. We'll get back in the kitchen and check that out. So if we pull the actual observer logs and search them for the target's onion address, this will tell us. And every hit is one time the target volunteered its own address to the machine that it had just met. Now, if we count them, it's like 5 out of 5. Right? Every single check-in, it handed over its own name or hidden service address. And we can see that it is in fact snitching on itself here. And that's the leak on a real node, exactly the way that the paper actually describes it. So for the fix, we change one thing. We change the version. We point the lab at 0.18.5.1, which is the current Monero that exists as I'm recording this anyway. And we bring the whole thing down and then back up so no state actually survives from that first run. The observer and the test, though, are unchanged. And the software is the only thing that actually moved. So we wait out the check-ins. Again, don't worry, I'm not going to do another fake ad. If you guys like that, though, by the way, let me know in the comments. I guarantee you there's a bunch of people who clicked off like, are you kidding? He said he'd never won one of these. But we'll go and we'll run the search again. And this time, you'd see it comes back with 1 hit out of 5. Obviously, much better, right? Now, with the updated version, we can see what's actually disclosed, and the address is not part of that. The 1 hit that's in there is the node listing itself the way that it lists any other peer, which is at a random spot with the timestamp zeroed, and those 2 details essentially are what the old fingerprint actually depended on. So the developers closed this in December of 2024, and it shipped in version 0.18.4.0. And the authors tested the old version, and the migration they recommended on page 12 is the one that Monero had already shipped. So they just never say it already shipped from what I saw in the paper. Of course, I'm also an idiot, so I could have just gotten it confused. But there's a second piece to all this. And this one is still live in the code today. When your node sends its own transaction, the one that you actually care about hiding, Monero funnels it through two of your actual outgoing connections instead of doing something like spreading it across all of them. Now, Monero does that on purpose. It's a privacy feature. Those two channels run constant fake traffic so that nobody watching can actually tell your real transactions from the noise. Now, the problem is that the doorways only open 2 peers wide, right? So anyone who controls both of those slots sees everything that you send. And it's all there in Monero's own source. And the number of these channels is set to 2. So the peer selection makes that worse. And the Monero devs pinned it down in the exact same file. So when your node decides which peers are allowed to be those 2 channels specifically, it filters them by the height of the peer claims to actually be. And nothing actually verifies that claim. So your node only considers peers that claim to be caught up with you or ahead of you. So an attacker claims like this huge height, right? And stays in the running while the honest peers who are even like a block behind get completely dropped from the consideration. So the devs left a note in there that a better approach is running Dandelion over Tor, and that is still worth investigating. So neither of those pieces, though, hands anyone your real IP on its own. Like, to actually get that, an attacker has to be your guard relay, like on Tor, and that's the one that Tor actually picks for you. So the paper's own model says that it takes something like 1,000 high-speed Tor relays plus 5,000 fake Monero nodes, all aimed at one specific person. Like, put a number on the relay half, like whatever it is. Each of those relays runs at like 20 megabytes a second. So 1,000 of them is 20,000 megabytes, right? And that's a second. So of the new capacity and the entire guard capacity of Tor in the paper's own measurements was like 54,000. So they have to essentially add on better than a third of the entire entry layer of Tor onto the network. Do you understand? Like, and they have to do that just to keep it fast enough to even get it chosen. Now, you have to run 5,000 fake Monero nodes beside it. And after all of that, the paper gives them like a 46% shot at one person that they aimed it at. So even with all those nodes and all those variables covered, the odd, which is insane, like nobody's doing that. It's a ridiculous level of attack, right? It's a budget that gets signed off on, right? With your name written as the request. Like, if that's the case, that's how it's going to go down. So it's just a giant, massive, expensive operation, and it needs real relays on a live Tor network, which is the part that I actually couldn't reproduce in a lab for obvious reasons. So you'll be like, yeah, you could. There's network simulators. Yeah, I could. Yeah, and you're right about that. Totally. I'm actually not sure. So I'll take that one back. I just didn't. Well, it's like, I think it's out of the scope of this. But the authors say so themselves in the paper, right? In writing, their own words are that this, quote, does not rely on breaking cryptographic transaction privacy, end quote. And it should be read as a, quote, practical feasibility result under the stated adversary capabilities, not as a claim that every Monero over Tor transaction is automatically de-anonymized, end quote. So the people who built the attack are essentially telling you and me the same thing that I'm telling you, and it's also on the Monero Research Lab's radar as well. Like the entire paper took up a good sized chunk at their agenda slot on July 29th, where the devs spend like half an hour or something picking it apart. Like they went back and forth on whether the fix fully holds and it's standing on their agenda. So the test that I just showed you says it does hold. But like I said, I'm not a crypto expert. So this is being handled in the open because that's kind of the beauty of Monero as a whole and as a community is that's how it works. It's not some VC funded meme coin. It's like pretty much all the rest of them are. It's a BTC Max who's going to crucify me. If you're running, Monero, how do you know what you're running? One command actually tells you, and you type Monero space -- version, and it prints it right back for you. So the leak was closed in 18.4.0, which came out in April of 2025, like I said earlier. If that number is 0.18.4.0 or higher, you're patched, and there's nothing for you actually to do. Now, if it's lower than that, that's your one job today, dude, because it's been like way too long since you updated. Come on, step up your game. So another thing, run your own node, okay? Everyone should be running their own node instead of trusting someone else's node so you're not handing your data over to some stranger's server or your address for them to babysit. The cryptography in this case did its job and is doing its job, and this was a networking problem. Monero runs thousands of machines all around the world, including mine, with no operator in the middle, and nobody's permission is required to do it. And a couple of unpatched networking quirks really aren't going to change that. So stay safe, stay aware. There are adversaries out there. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.